whatsoever.
Joe Payne tried to contact the company on their 24-hour mobile phone.
The Vodafone you have called has not responded. It may respond if you try again.
I phoned again, it was engaged. I kept phoning. I was determined that I would prove that they were not out on the street as promised. And at one point the phone was answered and there was disco music in the background. There was various noises from the other end. It all added up to the fact that there was no reply from the car phone.
Town and Country had disappeared without explanation. The residents were left unprotected. The person running the company, Peter Geranus, had declared himself bankrupt on the 8th of July. Private security firms began springing up in Bristol during the last 2 years. At one point there were 13. Town and Country is one of 8 that has since folded. Private policing is completely unregulated. There is no legislation.
The concern of the police is, and it's the concern that's shared by the vast majority of the public, is that anybody can walk out of prison on a Monday morning, hire or rent a peak cap, hire or lease a van and call themselves approach security patrol in the evening. And the problem with that sort of person is, through non-regulation, that person may not be trained in any way, not be accountable to the public, and have no background. And because of that, we then have the criminal element patrolling our streets.
Amiga Home Security Patrol started canvassing Bristol residents last August. The vetting of staff was one of their selling points.
Before we moved, I'd been burgled 3 times, and it really frightened me, and I couldn't stay in the house on my own. So this, I felt, gave me added security that I could stay in the house by myself at night and not have to worry.
Their sales pitch was very impressive. They were saying that all the security patrols that they were using would be vetted by the owner of the organisation, and that they would be checked for any criminal record. And we were assured that the security patrols that were coming around would not have a criminal record.
But it's claims like this that have angered Avon and Somerset Police. Inspector George Church runs its Community Affairs Division.
We cannot, under any circumstances, vet or monitor or check their staff at all. We do not do that. We cannot do it in law.
By July this year, Amiga's promise of 24-hour security in Redland no longer existed. As for their promise of vetting for criminal records, Watchdog has discovered the man who founded and first ran Amiga, Stephen John Flurry, has himself a criminal record and has received prison sentences for theft, burglary and supply of drugs. Linda Bryce is one of the residents who signed up with Amiga.
On Amiga's contract, there was boxes on the bottom for them to tick whether I had a burglar alarm, presence detector lights, smoke detectors, and being a security firm, I thought this was relevant to the service they were offering. Seeing that they're not a registered company or anything, what business did they have to know these things?
You tell them when you're going on holiday, and you trust them to look after the property for a whole fortnight, and then you say there's criminals looking after your house. This is ridiculous.
Well, I think there needs to be a body set up, a public accountable body, whereby they can monitor, where they can create standards and vet accordingly.
I don't think that anybody in our part of Bristol would bother with security patrols again in the future. We've been badly scolded by this particular incident, and I feel that we wouldn't touch them with a barge pole ever again.
The government says it's looking at tightening regulations in the area of private patrols, but looking is a long way off from doing. In the meantime, neighbourhood watches, beware. Alice.
Petrol forecourt promotions have come a long way since free wine glasses. Shell have got a new smart card. It works on a collect points with petrol and save up for prizes basis. Janet Lamont sent off for her Shell smart card. Every time she put £6 of petrol in the car, she got 1 point on her card. When the catalogue arrived, she decided to save for a mountain bike for her 8-year-old son, Stephen. Janet spends about £20 on petrol a week. And together, they did some sums. A mountain bike needed 1,535 points. They would have to spend £9,210 on petrol, and it would be 8 years and 47 weeks before Stephen got his bike. Martin Cake and Jane Illingworth from Southsea in Hampshire have 2 cars, spend about £40 a week on petrol, and therefore thought it would be easy to save for the gifts. Martin and Jane are getting married next year and want a camcorder for the day. But they worked out it would take them 17 years and 26 weeks to save up the 6,085 points they needed. So what's the point when ordinary drivers can't hope to get half the prizes? According to Shell, their promotion is good news for all HGV drivers. They've worked out you should be able to get the camcorder in just over a year. But they admit families who use less petrol are best aiming for cordless kettles and hairdryers. Annie.
Now, we've had a call from a viewer in York. Her son discovered 0898 numbers earlier this year. When the next phone bill arrived, it had doubled. She phoned BT. They arranged to put a bar on her phone which stopped anyone in the house calling a premium rate number. That's sex lines, racing tips, horoscopes, TV quizzes, the lot. But it didn't solve the problem. Her son went international using a number in Sweden. Several of these sex lines have moved their operations abroad for precisely this reason. What our Watchdog viewer didn't know then but knows now is to have an international bar put on her line as well. Ixtis, the organisation that police these lines, do have a compensation fund for anyone who can't pay their bill because someone in the house has got carried away dialing premium numbers. But it doesn't apply to international calls. There is a free phone number, 0800 500 212, for more information on the help that they can give you. Now, next, how would you feel if you were accused of someone else's driving offences? It can happen remarkably easily. Chris Choi has the story.
This is the home of someone who for 7 months has been bombarded by summonses, fines and prosecution notices, but he simply doesn't care. His mother alone has been fighting to clear his name.
It's been terrible. I'm just under a lot of stress. I just don't know what to do.
The correspondence from councils, tax offices and court officials is all addressed to Kyle. He's 2 years old. In the last 9 months he's been in trouble with the law time and time again. It started in February when he got a letter from Kingston magistrates saying he owed £45 in parking fines.
I got the first letter through. It was addressed to Kyle, who was only then 18 months old. I just thought it was stupid. I couldn't understand how they got Kyle's name or anything. I put it in the bin because I couldn't believe an 18-month-old baby could be seen driving a car. A few days later, I received another letter asking me to take him to court. If not, there will be a warrant issued for Kyle's arrest.
The court summonses referred to Kyle driving a Ford Granada GL all around the southeast of England. Kingston magistrates insisted Michelle Reid make an appearance before them. To prove her point, she took Kyle with her.
Please stand there.
I stood in the dock with Kyle next to me, as near to the dock as possible.
Will you take the Bible in your right hand and read the words on the card?
They asked me to swear on oath to state that Kyle doesn't drive a car. When the magistrate spoke back to me, he said that if Kyle has been known to have been driving this car, I will be prosecuted because he's not old enough to do so.
Will you please come forward and sign the statutory declaration?
They'd quash the fines only if she signed to say she knew nothing of the offences.
I was very, very angry, very frightened as well of standing in court.
Back home, Michelle Reid telephoned the DVLA, the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency. They confirmed Kyle was the registered keeper of a Ford Granada GL, but said they'd sort out the problem and take his name off the computer. But the summonses and fines kept arriving, from Richmond magistrates, from Thames Valley Police, from Warwick magistrates, and most annoying of all, from the DVLA, accusing Kyle of not paying his £130 car tax. Traffic wardens all over were looking for Kyle.
I've been driving in my car.
Michelle kept asking officials what was going on.
When I asked if they've how they got Kyle's details, all they tell me is it comes up on computer.
Anyone can register a car in your name. It can be done by criminals
or for malice just to annoy you. And in the time it takes to get your name off the DVLA computer, the real driver can notch up dozens of parking tickets. And even when you think the whole thing's been sorted out, the authorities keep chasing you. No wonder Michelle Reed feels she's been so badly treated.
I think it's stupid. They shouldn't have allowed it to happen at all. They should have checked more carefully.
The DVLA say they've definitely taken Kyle's name off the computer, but they can't say how many parking offences are already in the system under his name.
Can you help solve the mystery? The offences Kyle's been blamed for so far relate to the period from January to May. If you know who was actually driving the Ford Granada GL registration plate E797YUR, give us a call. Both Michelle Reed and the police would be very interested to hear. Now, a commercial break.
I don't suppose you have a copy of Fly Fishing by J.R. Hartley.
Nothing like that.
It is rather old.
I'm sorry.
It's by J.R. Hartley.
No luck, Dad. Never mind. There's still a few more to try.
Good old yellow pages. We don't just help with the nasty things in life, like a blocked drain. We're there for the nice things, too.
You do? Oh, that's wonderful. Can you keep it for me? My name, oh yes, it's J.R. Hartley.
If you too are looking for a book that's out of print but the Yellow Pages can't help you, here's a cautionary tale. Oxford. People have been burying their noses in books here since the 10th century. It's the obvious place to come for a rare or out-of-print edition, but you can't always come to Oxford, and although browsing's fun, it's not always practical. Especially if you happen to be living abroad. Andrew Wilson is a chemical engineer. He comes from Chester, but since January he's been rebuilding a chemical plant near Leipzig in Germany. Andrew wanted to find a copy of Design of Equilibrium Stage Processes.
The way that the text is displayed is very clear and precise. The book has actually been superseded by several other books since, but it's like an old car. Once you know how to use it and once you know where the mistakes are, because indeed there are one or two little mistakes, then you feel comfortable with the book.
But this specialist engineering textbook by Buford D. Smith went out of print in 1988. Andrew couldn't just go to the local bookshop and order a copy, so he called the publishers to see if they had any spares. They didn't, but they suggested he try one of the companies that specialise in tracking down out-of-print books. They gave him a telephone number for AAB British Book Search Service, based in Oxford. Last December, Andrew sent off for an application form.
When I received the form, I noticed immediately that there was a charge of £29.38 to register the book. Given that the second-hand value was probably not much more than £10, I considered already whether or not to send this cheque, but it's not a large amount of money, so I wanted the book, so I signed the cheque.
At the bottom of the form were details of the book search agreement. Just above where Andrew signed, it said, "I confirm that I will cover the costs of your research on my behalf, which can only be assessed after the book has been located." But there was no indication of how much those research costs might be. Andrew heard nothing from the company for 3 months. Then, at the beginning of March, they wrote saying his research form had arrived damaged. He needed to sign a new one, and the new form did mention research fees. 2 pence for every dealer contacted in England and 3 pence for dealers overseas. They said they would be contacting 1,750 dealers every week. Andrew decided not to sign and to cancel the search.
Contacting AAB is extremely difficult, and I only ever managed to contact an answering machine. So I left one message and there was no reply. And probably about a month later, after probably 2 or 3 more phone calls, I left a second and again no reply.
5 months on, Andrew finally heard from the company. In a fax, they confirmed they were cancelling the search until he'd paid their bill, which they also faxed. For failing to find a book valued £10, they were charging him £1,152.
My God, it's not possible. When you're looking for a book that's only worth about £10, it's an unbelievable shock when you receive a bill for £1,152. I couldn't believe that, 1, they had continued to do the research, and 2, they had made no effort to inform me that they were incurring these costs.
Richard Shelton lives in Henley-on-Thames. He first got in touch with the same book search company in 1991. He was trying to track down a paperback on management consultancy called The Restless Organisation. He also wanted a second copy of his family history, The Melville Family Roll of Honour, which 5 months later they told him they'd managed to find. The cost, £395, 5 times the book's value.
By the time I was feeling rather hard up and I was horrified, I thought this can't be right. I wrote immediately and said cancel, that I couldn't accept the charge, for this is way out of what I expected, and also cancel the request for the Restless Organisation.
The response, a threat to take Richard to court. He replied with a solicitor's letter, and the company agreed to cancel their bill. Then 2 years later, he heard from them again, this time about the Restless Organisation. They still hadn't found it, but they sent him a bill for £1,152.
I felt, oh my God, here they come again. Can't stop them. Over the top, they're now a restless organisation. That's come up to the top of the heap.
AAB British Book Search Services, based in Oxford, is run by a man called Louis de Sybaris. Oxfordshire Trading Standards are investigating his operation.
We're now looking at about 64 cases over the last few years. It's a company that we have a lot of concern about because quite clearly the people that have come to us have been invoiced with very large amounts and they're very worried about it. Obviously it makes us worried too.
Last summer, the company issued a summons on an Oxford student the day of her final examinations. She had been billed £636 for a paperback worth just £7.
Obviously there were letters going backwards and forwards about her case. We thought perhaps it had come to an end, and then suddenly he took her to court. We went along to the court, and it was found there that the contract really put very little obligation on him, was therefore an unfair contract, and the price was unjustifiably high, and the district judge threw the case out at that point.
Watchdog contacted 20 book search companies. 12 make no charge at all to search for a book. The remaining 8 make a nominal charge, but none more than £16. So, what does the company have to say? Louis de Sybaris agreed to be interviewed, then he cancelled, saying he was going abroad. So, last week we went along to visit him anyway.
Mr. de Sybaris? Mr. de Sybaris? My name's Alice Beer from BBC Television's Watchdog programme.
I know who you are.
Sorry, please don't touch the camera.
Leave the camera
Don't
alone.
touch the camera. Please don't touch the camera. Why aren't you prepared to answer our questions?
No, I don't like you. I know you try
Your
to destroy
customers don't like you
no,
particularly.
I don't give a shit about them. They asked for my work and I wanted to be paid.
Why are you threatening to take...
It was difficult to get Mr. de Sybaris to listen to, let alone answer a question.
I'm going to shoot you down. I'm going to put a bullet through you.
I think it's a little excessive. Just to answer these questions.
He refused. AAB's new contracts now specify their charges, but it can still cost you more than £1,000 for a £10 book.
The company tell Watchdog the bill they sent to Richard Shelton was the result of a computer error, and he owes them nothing. In Andrew Wilson's case, they insist he still owes them £1,152, although in neither case did the company actually find those books. And if you know where there's a copy of The Restless Organisation by J.W. Hunt, or even better, Design of Equilibrium Stage Processes by Buford D. Smith, give us a ring. Alice, an update on the phones.
It's been a really busy night, taken lots and lots of calls. One from Alan and Stella McLean of Skelmersdale in Lancashire.
They were offered a courtesy car by a garage while their car was being repaired, but they were then involved in a 3-car pile-up. Nobody was injured, but there was a lot of damage. But when they took what was left of the courtesy car back, the garage told them they weren't insured. They're now being sued by 3 people and they face bills for £10,000. If you're offered the use of a free car, it's worth checking that you're insured. Gerard Hunt from Kingsbury in North London, he's a builder and parks his car and van outside his house late at night and moves them very early in the morning. Last week he got parking tickets on both the car and the van. When he looked at the tickets closely, he saw they were issued at 2:45 in the morning. We've checked with Brent Council and they told us we are happy to offer our customers a 24-hour service. And we've suddenly been getting lots of calls from small businesses who've received invoices for an entry into an international fax directory. The invoices come from Central Europe, and every now and then they seem to send out a huge mail shot, and we got inundated with inquiries. It's not an invoice, don't send any money.
And that's all we've got time for. Our phone lines are open until 9. After that, we've got the answer phones. But from all of us here on the team, good night.
Gossip can lead to hiccups in people's plans. EastEnders next on BBC One.
This week on Inside Story, Mark's nose gets straighter.
Tap.
Jeanette's tummy gets flatter. And the plastic surgeon gets his motor. The who on earth and why on earth of cosmetic surgery. BBC One's Inside Story, Thursday at 10 o'clock.
Tuesday night, BBC One will be kicking.
For when the one great scorer comes to write against your name, he marks not that you won or lost, but how you played the game.
Newcastle United marches on into Europe. Tuesday, 8 o'clock, BBC One. The nation's channel, the nation's game.
He's out of the Met.
You cost me my job and the only woman I gave a toss about.
You needed no help from me to get yourself kicked out.
And he's out on his own.
Do you remember that copper? The one that shot a man and got off without a trial?
Personally, I think you've got a bargain.
I know how hard it's been. I know you're bitter.
Harry, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Neil Pearson is Tony Clark.
You do not have to say anything unless you wish to do so.
ex-job.
Don't know what you've been drinking, but I think it was for external use only.
Between the Lines.
What would I want your advice for? Look where it's got you.
Award-winning drama. Wednesday at 9:30 on BBC One.
A personal view of Shakespeare on BBC Two in a moment with the top director Adrian Noble. And fond memories of one of our funniest men in half an hour here on BBC One when Michael Parkinson pays tribute to Les Dawson. And no mother-in-law jokes now, please. They might not be appreciated.